The S-Blast 92 was introduced to Splatoon 3 in June 2023, making it the newest blaster in the series as of this video. It packs an insanely hard punch, currently having the highest single shot damage of any blaster in the game, but it also has two separate firing modes that make it very unique in Splatoon. Let's talk about how to get the most out of it in SalmonRun. Stats. The S-Blast is unique as it has two different firing modes, long range and short range. They both deal 300 damage per direct shot and 150 damage per indirect shot. It also has a splash damage of 75. Throughout this video, I'll refer to the different firing modes as long range or short range, as this feels the simplest way to do it. However, you may hear me refer to them as grounded shots and jumping shots, as this is how they're activated. The long range grounded shot is the default shot that you fire. This shot has excellent range and covers about the same distance as the range blaster. It also has one of the fastest travel speeds of any blaster. The downside is that the blast radius is tiny and is the smallest in the game currently. It has the ability to indirectly damage enemies with its area of effect, though it is small. However, the S-Blast has perfect accuracy with the long range shot, giving you extremely precise aim. When using long range shots, you'll have precision rather than AoE. When you jump, the S-Blast switches modes and you activate its short range mode or jumping shots. You trade range for AoE in this mode and your shots have a huge explosive radius. You will notice a noise when the firing mode switches. When jumping, the S-Blast doesn't have perfect accuracy, and there is a chance your shots will deviate from the intended target, but for what you may lack in accuracy, you make up for in coverage. There is a bit more to jump tech with this weapon. I'll talk more about it in the final part of the video. Both firing modes have the same ink usage, fire rate, and ink recovery. You get just under 20 shots per full ink tank, and there is a 60 frame cooldown before ink starts recovering. The continuous fire rate was changed in July 2024. It was reduced from 60 frames to 55 frames. However, this still makes it the second slowest blaster, only behind the range blaster. I'll talk more about this as well in the final part of the video. Like other blasters, you're forced to play around this ink inefficiency and learn to work with the little ink you have. You'll only be able to paint thin paths for yourself with the long range mode, but the short range mode can help if you need a wider area covered. Bombs shouldn't be overused due to the sluggish ink recovery, and besides, your main weapon is way more effective in almost every single way. Boss slaying. The S-Blast is the only blaster that can one-shot a steelhead with a direct shot. This makes you one of the best weapons in the game to focus on these, and I would heavily encourage hunting them for sport. Long range mode gives you the range and safety to take them out easily, and the short range mode also works with a jump, just make sure you're within range. For bosses with 500 HP, you only need 2 direct shots. You're often close enough to them that you can use the short range mode to hit multiple targets at once and make use of the generous AoE. But I wouldn't be against using the long range mode to take out bosses earlier either, as all blasters can sometimes struggle with movement or ink tank management if things get overwhelming. Stingers, fish sticks and flipper floppers are all best taken care of with short range shots, as the AoE hits multiple enemies and paints larger areas. But this requires you to be closer and requires you to put yourself at risk. The good thing about the S-Blast is that you can play it safer with long range shots if you feel you need to, and this applies to enemies with higher HP too, such as drizzlers and big shots, which take 3 hits and 4 hits respectively. Again, the current situation should dictate whether you want to snipe these bosses with range and safety, or if you want to be up close and hitting several things at once. Like all blasters, you'll want to only use splat bombs if necessary, such as for the required bosses. Your ink tank doesn't suit this role and your main weapon is far more effective, but in freelance you may have to adapt. If faced with multiple flyfish, I would consider deploying specials to help. During king waves, you'll likely find yourself defeating bosses and generating golden eggs, rather than concentrating damage on the kings. Like all blasters, you don't have the fastest fire rate, so you're better served by clearing lessers, taking down statics and providing eggs to launch at the kings. During night waves, you'll have a lot of flexibility in how you choose to play this weapon, but often with blasters and slower shooting weapons, proactivity benefits you. A great example of this is during Rush. As the S-Blast, you'll struggle up close against the lessers, but from a distance and with some preventative work, you can clear the lessers with minimal effort. The key is to create space by removing the risk of lessers before they can get too close. This also works well in gorillas, being able to hit both the gorilla and the small fry at the same time. Unlike PvP, you don't run the risk of unknown movement from enemies, which means learning patterns and cycles helps the S-Blast become extremely effective at predicting when to attack and when to back off. Weapon role. Like the majority of blasters, the S-Blast role falls firmly into the role of a slayer. It's such a hugely satisfying weapon to play because I feel like the way it works with its dual shooting mode leaves it with an answer to every boss. But you're not invincible, and as powerful as this weapon is, you'll need to remember that blasters as a whole are inefficient and on the slower side. The S-Blast is indeed a powerful weapon, but it requires space and pacing to pull off. It requires awareness of what your teammates are doing and a learned ability to play with the ink you have, not with the ink you wish you had. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but blasters are high skill weapons because they force you to play smarter, not faster. Utilising the range, the dual shooting mode and its high damage means that you can yield some impressive boss slaying with the S-Blast. I'd heavily encourage taking a lead slayer role with this weapon, but I understand the weapon itself doesn't feel immediately intuitive or easy to use. Speaking from experience, blasters are hard to master, especially in SalmonRun, where you're punished for remaining still, punished for running out of ink, and punished just for existing, I guess. If you're somebody that struggles with the S-Blast mechanics, fear not. You can still be extremely effective in a slightly more supportive manner, but you're not best suited to throwing bombs or being the sole egg collector. When supporting, you're best suited to managing clusters of enemies with the wide AoE, more specifically, lessers. At 300 damage, you substantially damage cohorts, leaving them with only 100 HP left. You can finish them off with egg throw damage, or your team can then comfortably manage them. 400 HP can be a wall to some weapons, so being able to reduce the work of defeating them by up to 75% is huge for time management and efficiency within a shift. Sometimes you'll be the only weapon in the comp with AoE damage, and you'll need to provide invaluable assistance for your teammates. This is how you can support your team if you ever feel unsure of your strengths with this weapon. Regardless of how you feel about it, I'd really encourage learning the ropes of this weapon, as it truly feels like it's in a class of its own. Its ability to snipe enemies with precision from afar, or throw itself into the middle of messy fights and hit everything with large explosive shots, gives it an answer to almost everything in SalmonRun. Weapon tech. The funny thing about the S-Blast is that you're supposed to decide which mode you want to use, long range for precision or short range for wide burst damage. Each of these modes have their pros and cons, but for the long range, what if I told you can use it whilst jumping? Pressing ZR before jumping allows you to fire long range shots whilst in the air, without any of the jump RNG that is associated with jumping. When people discuss why the S-Blast is the strongest, most powerful blaster in Splatoon, it's usually because of this. All blasters have jump RNG associated with them. Even the S-Blast runs the risk of having its shots deviate from the intended target when using the short range mode. But its long range mode is a unique exception within the blaster class, and when you get the hang of it, you're able to exploit its perfect accuracy. Of course, you can argue that targets in SalmonRun are bigger and slower and easier to predict than your enemies in PvP. However, I still felt it was worth mentioning, as it truly elevates this weapon. It gives it a unique property that allows it to work on a level that other blasters can't. My last point, and one that isn't necessarily to do with the jumping, but just with using this weapon in general, is advice about how to move and fire when using this weapon. Much the same as the range blaster, you're slow when continuously firing, and this leaves you vulnerable in a lot of ways. Instead of remaining still whilst continuously firing, I'd recommend firing, then going into ink, firing again, then going into ink, and so on. It's actually faster to get off consecutive shots this way. You don't actually take your finger off the trigger, you just go into ink in between every shot. This allows you to move faster, reduces the end lag of the shot, and allows you to constantly recover ink. This also makes it easier to switch between long and short range modes depending on the current threats and targets. I think the S-Blast is one of the most technically difficult weapons we have in SalmonRun currently, but the payoff for practicing this weapon is huge. If you're like me and you find blasters a bit of a skill check, I'd really recommend sticking with it and persevering through the initial first stages. It gets easier and soon, like me, you'll value their strengths in ways other weapons can't even compare. I hope this video helps you appreciate the S-Blast 92 a little bit more. I'll catch you guys soon.